It was supposed to be our third anniversary. I'd spent the entire day preparing a special meal, trying to recreate one of Arthur's favorite dishes from his childhood. The aroma filled our apartment with what I hoped would be comforting memories. I even bought a new dress, something simple but elegant, to surprise him. Then, everything fell apart. Arthur's mother and uncle showed up uninvited, and during dinner Arthur spat out the food I'd prepared, declaring it inedible and proclaiming to his family that I was a worthless wife. I should have known then that it was over. Hello everyone. My name is Alicia, and I want to share my story with you. It's a story of heartbreak, betrayal, but ultimately of finding my strength. Before I get started, I'd love to know where you're all listening from. Please, take a moment and leave a comment telling me where in the world you are. It always amazes me how connected we can be, even across vast distances. The first time I met Arthur, I was 24 years old and working as a junior marketing associate. He was charming, handsome, and swept me off my feet with his grand gestures and declarations of love. He told me he had been searching for someone like me his whole life. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. We went on weekend trips to the coast, spent hours laughing over dinner, and talked about our dreams for the future. He introduced me to his family, and that's where the first cracks began to appear. Arthur's family was very traditional, very set in their ways. His mother, Eleanor, was a formidable woman, the matriarch of the family. She had very specific ideas about how a wife should behave and what she should contribute to the marriage.
From the beginning, she made it clear that she didn't think I was good enough for her precious Arthur. She found fault with everything, from my career to my taste in clothes. Arthur's uncle, Charles, was equally disapproving, constantly making condescending remarks about my lack of domestic skills. I tried to ignore their disapproval, focusing on my love for Arthur. He assured me that their opinions didn't matter, that he loved me for who I was. We dated for 3 years, and during that time the pressure from his family intensified. They constantly questioned when we were going to get married and start a family. Arthur, always eager to please his mother, began to echo their sentiments. He would casually mention how much his mother wanted grandchildren, or how important it was to her that he marry someone who could properly care for him and the house. Eventually I caved.
I loved Arthur, and I wanted to make him happy. We got married in a lavish ceremony, mostly planned and paid for by Eleanor. I felt like a puppet in my own wedding, forced to adhere to Eleanor's vision of the perfect bride. The reception was filled with polite smiles and thinly veiled criticisms from Arthur's family. I tried to brush it off, reminding myself that what mattered was my love for Arthur, but the seeds of doubt had been planted and they began to grow. Our first year of marriage was difficult. The constant pressure from Arthur's family, combined with Arthur's inability to stand up to them, created a wedge between us. Eleanor would call Arthur multiple times a day, meddling in our affairs, offering unsolicited advice, and criticizing everything I did. Arthur, instead of defending me, would simply nod and agree, then relay her complaints to me later.
I started to feel like I was living in a pressure cooker, constantly walking on eggshells, trying to avoid triggering Eleanor's disapproval. My career suffered as I tried to balance work with the impossible expectations of being the perfect wife and daughter-in-law. I cooked elaborate meals, kept the house spotless, and tried to anticipate their every need. But it was never enough. They always found something to criticize. Arthur, once so attentive and loving, became distant and critical. He started to compare me to his mother, praising her cooking, her cleaning, and her unwavering devotion to her family. He would come home from work and complain about the mess in the house or the blandness of the dinner. I felt like I was failing him, failing his family, failing at being a wife. Then came our third anniversary.
I had hoped that this special occasion would be a turning point, a chance for us to reconnect and reaffirm our love for each other. I spent the day cooking his favorite childhood dish, a complicated recipe passed down through generations of his family. It took hours, but I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to show him how much I cared, how much I was willing to try. I had just set the table when the doorbell rang. Arthur wasn't due home for another hour. I opened the door to find Eleanor and Charles standing there, their faces grim. They barged into the apartment without a word, their eyes scanning the room, looking for flaws. "We decided to join you for your anniversary dinner," Eleanor announced, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Arthur told us about the special meal you were preparing, and we wanted to see if you were finally learning to cook properly." My heart sank. This was supposed to be a romantic evening, just the two of us. Now, it was going to be another round of criticism and judgment. I forced a smile and ushered them into the dining room, trying to hide my disappointment. Arthur arrived shortly after, looking surprised to see his mother and uncle. He didn't question their presence, simply greeting them with a kiss on the cheek. We all sat down at the table, the atmosphere thick with tension. I served the meal, my hands trembling slightly. Eleanor and Charles took their first bites, their expressions unreadable. Then it happened. Arthur took a bite of the dish, chewed for a moment, and then spat it out onto his plate. The sound echoed through the silent room. My face burned with shame and humiliation. "This is disgusting," he declared, his voice dripping with disdain. "How could you possibly call this food?"
My mother makes this dish so much better. You're a disgrace to this family, Alicia. You can't even cook a simple meal. Tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't believe what was happening. My husband, the man who had once professed to love me, was publicly humiliating me in front of his family. Eleanor and Charles watched with smug satisfaction, their faces betraying their long-held belief that I was unworthy. I stood up from the table, my hands shaking. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm done." I ran to our bedroom, grabbed my purse and keys, and stormed out of the apartment. I didn't look back. I drove straight to my sister's house, tears streaming down my face. My sister Sarah was shocked to see me in such a state. I told her everything, pouring out my heart, recounting the years of abuse and manipulation I had endured. She listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. "You deserve better than this, Alicia," she said, her eyes filled with anger. "You deserve to be with someone who loves and respects you, not someone who treats you like a doormat." I knew she was right. I had been living a lie, trying to please people who would never be satisfied. I had sacrificed my happiness, my career, and my self-respect for a man who didn't appreciate me. It was time to take back control of my life. The next few weeks were a blur. Arthur and his family bombarded me with texts and calls, begging me to come back. They apologized for their behavior, promising to change, swearing that they loved me. Arthur sent me long, emotional messages telling me how lost he was without me, how much he regretted his actions. Eleanor even called, her tone surprisingly conciliatory.
She told me that she had been too hard on me, that she recognized my efforts to please them, that she wanted me to come back and be a part of their family. But I knew it was all a manipulation, a desperate attempt to regain control. I couldn't trust them. I ignored their pleas and focused on separating my life from Arthur's. I started by changing my phone number and blocking his and his family's numbers on social media. I went back to the apartment to retrieve my belongings, accompanied by Sarah for support. Arthur was there, waiting for me, his eyes red and swollen. He begged me to stay, promising to leave his family, to start a new life with me, but I couldn't do it. The damage was done. I had lost all trust and respect for him. I packed my bags, ignoring his desperate pleas, and walked out of the apartment for the last time.
Next, I consulted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. Arthur and his family were furious. They accused me of being selfish, of abandoning my vows, of ruining their family. They threatened to make my life miserable, to drag me through the mud in court. But I stood my ground. I refused to be intimidated. I started to rebuild my life, focusing on my career and my friendships. I reconnected with old friends, spent time with my family, and pursued my hobbies. I started to feel like myself again, confident and independent. A few months later, I attended a mutual friend's birthday party. I knew that Arthur and his family would be there, but I was determined not to let them ruin my evening. I dressed in a stunning black dress, feeling confident and empowered.
As I walked into the party, I saw Arthur standing in a corner with his mother and uncle, their faces etched with disapproval. They noticed me immediately, their eyes narrowing. Arthur approached me, his expression a mixture of longing and regret. "Alicia," he said, his voice pleading. "Please, can we talk?" "There's nothing to talk about, Arthur," I replied, my voice firm. "It's over." "But I love you," he protested. "I made a mistake. Please, give me another chance." "You had your chance, Arthur," I said. "You chose your family over me. You humiliated me, you disrespected me, and you broke my heart. I'm not going to let you do that to me again." Eleanor and Charles joined us, their faces filled with animosity. "You're making a big mistake, Alicia," Eleanor hissed. "You'll never find anyone better than Arthur. He's a good man, and you're throwing it all away." "He's a mama's boy who can't stand up for himself," I retorted, my voice rising. "He allowed you to control our lives, to dictate our every move. I'm not going to live like that anymore." "You ungrateful little witch," Charles spat, his face turning red. "You should be thanking us for taking you in. You were nothing before Arthur." "I was perfectly fine before Arthur," I shot back. "I had a successful career, loving friends, and a supportive family. You're the ones who tried to destroy my life. But I'm not going to let you win." I turned to Arthur, my eyes filled with disappointment. "I thought you loved me," I said. "I thought you would protect me. But you were too weak, too afraid to stand up to your family. I deserve better than that." I walked away, leaving them standing there, speechless.
I spent the rest of the evening surrounded by friends, laughing and dancing, feeling free and happy. I realized that I didn't need Arthur or his family to be happy. I could create my own happiness, my own life. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Arthur and his family continued to harass me, sending me hateful messages, spreading rumors about me, trying to make my life miserable. But I refused to let them get to me. I focused on my work, my friends, and my well-being. I started seeing a therapist to help me process the trauma of my marriage. I learned to set boundaries, to assert myself, and to prioritize my own needs. I realized that I had spent too many years trying to please others, neglecting my own happiness. It was time to put myself first. Arthur continued to reach out to me, begging for forgiveness, promising to change.
He even showed up at my office one day, pleading with me to reconsider. But I refused to see him. I had moved on. I had closed that chapter of my life. I moved the last of my things out of the apartment, leaving behind the signed divorce papers and a lifetime of painful memories. As I drove away, I felt a sense of relief, a sense of freedom. I was finally free from Arthur and his toxic family. I learned a valuable lesson from this experience. I learned that I deserve to be with someone who loves and respects me, someone who values my opinion and supports my dreams. I learned that I'm strong and capable, and that I can overcome any obstacle that comes my way. I learned that I'm worthy of love and happiness, and that I should never settle for anything less. And that's my story. A story of pain, betrayal, and ultimately of triumph. A story of finding my strength and reclaiming my life.
I hope my story resonates with you, and I hope it inspires you to stand up for yourself, to prioritize your well-being, and to never tolerate disrespect. Remember, you deserve to be happy, and you have the power to create your own happiness. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel for more stories of resilience, empowerment, and self-discovery.